The joke is over when Gibson notices Fender taking a piece of their business. Just 2 years after the Fender Telecaster, Gibson introduces the Les Paul Gold Top.
To make sure that Gibson could make a splash with the solid body guitar, they got the most famous guitar player in the world at that time to endorse it. And of course that would be Les Paul, who was already the biggest proponent of this solid body electric guitar. It's by far the most successful endorsement agreement ever in the history of musical instruments.
Okay, now we're in the mid-50s, and these are the products you'd see in the stores. A Fender guitar with a flat body and a bolted-on neck, or a Gibson guitar with a carved top, which was an innovation, and a glued-in neck. It was interesting that Gibson had discovered that they thought it sounded better with a maple top, and they painted the guitars gold in the beginning to cover it so that Fender wouldn't know what they had done. This is the beginning of the electric guitar era. This is the beginning of rock and roll.
A 1, 2, a 1, 2, 3.
The guitar wars between Fender and Gibson leads to even greater innovations and brings about the final stage of the electric guitar's invention. Fender is the largest manufacturer of electric guitars in the world. Their factories in Southern California and Mexico produce nearly 1,200 instruments a day. Computerized lathes shape the solid wood blocks into recognizable shapes. Over 50 years out, and the 1950 Telecaster is still going strong. Fender sells nearly 200,000 a year across the globe. The Telecaster has been in continuous production longer than any other electric guitar. Players love the guitar's history so much, a custom beating is the hottest selling finish on a brand new Telecaster.
My favorite, the relic finish, because you don't have to worry about it. You do whatever to it, and that's the way it is, you know? It's your own, it's an artistic view of how we feel an aged-looking guitar should look. Heavy arm wear, you know, Coke bottles hitting it or beer bottles hitting it, you know, it's 40 to 50 years old and getting it done in about 2 hours, basically.
The success of the Telecaster inspires Leo Fender to create other instruments.
The thunder, the roar, it's just who I am, you know? I love playing the bass guitar.
To Leo Fender, the Doghouse stand-up bass is big, heavy, and impractical. In 1951, he invents the solid-body electric bass guitar.
No one was really asking for an electric bass. Leo Fender just said, bassists need this, and it'll be a good thing. The electric bass changed popular music.
I said to myself, this is the instrument I've been waiting for. My mother really just gave it to me to keep me quiet and keep me occupied, and it kept me occupied. Not very quiet though. I love it when I look out at the audience and I see them go like this. Because then you're touching them there. They're feeling it. That's what it's about. It's more than a sound. It's a whole experience, a whole feeling, a whole way that you're touching their soul, and it's pretty deep.
With the electric bass in hand, generations of players like James Jamerson and Bootsy Collins pump out hit after hit with a steady groove. The heartbeat of Fender's bass sets the rhythm for entirely new musical genres, from Motown to funk. But winding back to 1951, Leo Fender's story is just beginning. His hands are full trying to meet demands for precision basses, Telecasters, and a growing line of amplifiers. Fender's marketing guru, Don Randall, thinks Fender should worry about Gibson's stunning new Les Paul Gold Top.
Leo, look at this guitar. It's pretty, it's elegant, It's expensive. It's got this beautiful gold finish. Suddenly, our Telecaster looks rather plain. It does look kind of planky. Well, for the people who played them, this is what we love about them. But compared to the Les Paul, Mr. Randall felt we need a line and we need to upgrade and we need the more expensive. We need a Cadillac.
The result? The most influential solid-body guitar ever made, the Stratocaster. The Stratocaster rewrites the rules on what an electric guitar can be.
How do you go from a Telecaster to a Stratocaster? The basic shape of the instruments is pretty much the same. Where it changed was the issues with the Telecaster being basically a square-cut instrument. When players would play, at the time, they would sit down, or even if they stood up or had it on a strap, you could see this area here, their arms would rub against it. And a lot of these guys, you know, after all, drinking a lot of beer, and they had these nice guts, and the guitar would kind of chafe, especially under hot, sweaty lights. So you've got the cutaway on this side. Another issue was with the Telecaster, if a player wanted to play up high here, that this area, this piece of meat here would kind of be in the way. So one of the first things that was done in the creation of the Stratocaster was to remove that piece, allowing the player's hand to naturally find its way into these higher registers. You have this elbow cut, which allows for a really comfortable feeling where your hand would lay right in the exact spot. And the tummy cut that would allow the guitar to feel really a part of your body. It's one of the great things about the Strat, whether you're slinging it low or wearing it high or even sitting down, it really feels like a prosthetic device. It's not an instrument. The next change between the two guitars is that in the Telecaster you've got 2 pickups, and on the Strat you've got 3 pickups. You've got a rhythm pickup, a lead pickup, and a pickup in the middle. The rhythm pickup has a much bassier sound. The lead pickup has a very trebly sound, and of course the middle pickup is somewhere in between. In my opinion, the crowning glory of the Stratocaster, though, is this very simple bridge and tremolo unit. The 6 bridge pieces held in place by a row of screws and counterbalanced with a row of springs. You've got these springs pulling the bridge in one direction, and on the top you've got strings pulling it in another direction. And the whole thing rocks on these very simple wood screws. Unlike previous vibrato bars or tremolo bars, this perfect equilibrium made the Strat vibrato come back in tune every time. It was easy to use, and simplicity itself, pure Leo Fender.
But even with its sleek body and high-tech hardware, the Stratocaster wasn't going to sell itself. It needed some clever promotion and a modern edge. While Gibson brochures pictured conservative-looking musicians like Les Paul in a suit, Fender pictured surfers, fighter pilots, and babes in bikinis with their guitars. The advent of television brings electric guitars to the masses. Suddenly, everyone hears and sees this new invention with all its cool electronics. Thousands buy the new guitars. As generations of players push the limits of their instruments, the focus shifts from guitar makers to guitar players. And for the guitar hero, plugging in means changing history. Eric Clapton is the most revered and imitated guitarist of his generation. In 1963, Clapton leads the British blues invasion, updating the sound of the earliest bluesmen with a faster pace and a whole lot of volume. While inventors like Leo Fender treat amplifier distortion as a major technical problem, everyday players crank up their amps as their creative solution.
I'm going to attempt to take you through some of these things and show you how they were intended to be used, and of course what happened when the nefarious guitar players got their hands on them. So here we have this beautiful little Champion 600 amp and our Fender Princeton lap steel. That's certainly the sound that Leo had in mind when he made these things. But being the guitar players that we are, we just couldn't leave it alone. So we put down our lap steels, but we had this great little amp, picked up our Stratocasters, picked up our Stratocaster guitars, turned them on 10, and lo and behold,
Pushed beyond their design limits, the components in the amplifier give up and distort the sound.
so, louder is better. The next step, used as intended, it was a jazz country amp. Never leaving it alone. It also sounds really good when you nail it. Again, unintended. Leo Fender's rolling over in his grave right now. We have a super reverb amp and the voice of surf, the Fender Jaguar. Cranked up is really a thing of beauty. Around 1975, a gentleman named Randy Smith perfected the master volume control in guitar amplifiers, allowing guitarists to get the sound of these amps distorted at lower volumes. Well, lower volume, what's lower volumes? Who wants lower volumes in any way? So the Fender Supersonic is the ultimate master volume, insane amplifier.
The guitar's evolution takes a path of its own. With the Fender and Gibson designs of the 1950s, the building blocks for the modern electric guitar are in place and remain virtually unchanged.
So by now, the electric guitar has pretty much grown up into what it's going to be. And there were a lot of guys that could really play it, too. Then they started coming up with these things that we call pedals, which are add-on devices. Sound comes down out of the guitar through the wire, goes into the pedal, then onto the amplifier. And the pedal itself affects the sound, gives you different kind of sounds. One of the first ones was echo. Without, there it is with it. Then they came up with the wah-wah pedal, which was very popular. But the one that really set everybody free, gave everybody that ability to sort of make it their own personal statement, really expand what they were doing, was distortion. Fun, huh?
One of the ironies of the electric guitar is the original intent of the inventor. And what happened in the end with the people who then took the instrument up and played it is they altered the sound of the instrument altogether. So they took a very clean guitar sound and they made it dirty.
Along came Jimi Hendrix. When his first record came out, me and my buddy sat and listened to it. It was like hearing a foreign language. We knew it was a guitar, but we could not tell for about 6 months what it was doing. And the way that he did that, of course, he was an amazing guitar player, but he used all these pedals and all these new sounds that were available to the absolute maximum. I can't play like him. Nobody can play like him.
As a fan listening to this, I didn't know what that was. It was taking me to a place, not only that was new, but it was taking me to a place that I didn't even know existed. He was doing it on a guitar that was designed in 1954 by a person who would not have understood and certainly would not have liked what Jimi Hendrix was doing with it.
Capturing the voice of an entire generation, the electric guitar becomes a symbol of freedom and rebellion, unifying causes and fueling revolutions of the 1960s. And in 1965, the very foundation of folk music shatters when one man plugs in. Bob Dylan, the most famous acoustic folk artist, picks up an electric. His folk purist fans boo instead of cheer, and the music scene is turned upside down.
This idea that music is compartmentalized, and if you play this kind of music, you look a certain way and you sing a certain kind of lyric and you present yourself on stage a certain kind of way. Well, artists, of course, hate that stuff, and they obliterate all that stuff. And the electric guitar really helped to cross all sorts of boundaries. And Bob Dylan going electric in Newport 65 was only one example.
The electric guitar's scope and influence seems boundless, crossing borders, bridging cultures, and, with historical hindsight, even helping to topple governments.
There was a reflection in the 90s that as the Soviet Union collapsed, that maybe we could attribute this to the universal appeal of the electric guitar and the export of this American cultural phenomenon of electronic music to the Soviet Union.
Through the power of invention and innovation, a 500-year-old instrument is utterly transformed, spawning new musical genres and inspiring heroes. In just 7 decades, this instrument changed the world.
Yo, Kobe.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Now,
Hey.
G.E. Smith and his band are going to capture that entire revolution in a single song. Taking an old-time classic, Camptown Races, he's going to play the history of the electric guitar, instrument by instrument, through decades of sound.
All right now, what me and the fellas are going to try to do right here is a short history of the electric guitar, starting with this acoustic guitar that you can't hear. A 1, 2, a 1, 2, 3.
The creativity that comes out of, here's a tool where you can really alter things in a way that the only limit is your imagination.
A 1, 2, a 1, 2, 3, 4.
There's something beautiful about it, and it doesn't sound like an acoustic guitar. It doesn't sound like where the instrument started. It's gone in a whole new realm.
Oh, we're going to Kobe now. We're going to end. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
To have a way to express yourself in a way that's maybe a little rebellious, maybe a little crazy, maybe allowing you to do things that you might not do on your own, but when you have that guitar in hand, it gives you a special power.
The fascinating thing about electric guitar history is that the product has really not changed much since it was invented. All the innovations have been small, yet major in their effect on our culture as they change music through the years.
In the story of electric guitar, you have so many things about America and about global popular culture coming together. You have invention, faith in the future. You have faith in technology, and you have artistry. You have creativity. All of these things come together in the guitar.